Like this song, Homage to Charlie Christian goes. And so on and so on, but that's like the way Charlie Christian played a little sloppier than he did.
What about Scotty Moore?
Oh, Scotty Moore. Well, see, now Scotty Moore, I figured out what he was doing when I was 12. When Mystery Train first came out, no, Mystery Train came out in 54 or so. I'd had that record a couple of years, but I figured out that he was using a flat pick of the fingers and playing Merle Travis styles like. I mean, this is what it sounds like without echo. When you put the echo on it, it's like. That's double pick, and they get the hard way. So on and so on, and that tune's on our new record at considerably greater velocity. And my concept for doing that song in the first place was to play the traditional licks. I'm quite a bit of a traditionalist when I do older tunes. I like to play the original solos first and then kind of play it the way I wished I could have back then.
Not to mention on the original instrument itself.
Maybe it is. We'll see. I've got a guitar that I think may be Scotty Moore's old Gibson ES-295. Actually, the best sounding old Gibson I have is my old ES-350 blonde one like Chuck Berry had that I got new for my birthday in '57. And it's actually a 1956 guitar.
Still have that?
Yeah, I sold it twice. Sold it one time for $150 by a white 58 Impala. So I could get to work. At that time I had to do sheet metal work. My father insisted when I got out of high school in '63 that I do the trades. Get a union trade because he had been a musician and the war destroyed his band, so he never played anymore after that, but he would not allow me to just play music.
Right.
I could do it at night and work during the day, which I did. I played 6 nights a week and jam sessions on the weekends. Still had to get up and do sheet metal work every day, cut my hands up and smash my thumb with hammers and things. I paid a lot of dues in that respect.
Where was this? Where were you growing up?
In Washington, D.C.
88 Elmira
Yep.
Street. What about people like James Burton and Wes Montgomery? And who's Speedy West?
Wow. Well, Speedy West is actually a steel player. Jimmy Bryant was the guitar player in that duo. And Jimmy Bryant just played lightning speed all the time. He was the world's fastest guitar player. I was fortunate enough to see him play live in a club in Nashville one time. That was quite a thrill for me. I'm not going to sit here and try to demonstrate how Jimmy Bryant played because I really can't sit here and play fast unless I'm in the heat of the battle.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
I'm one of these guys that doesn't sit around and practice much. I only play when the band's there and I'm inspired to do it.
Right.
It's a whole different thing.
That's okay. I'm not going to put you through too much of this. Billy Butler was somebody you mentioned earlier. Who was he?
Well, Billy Butler was the guitar player with Bill Doggett that did Honky Tonk
Right.
in '56. And there is a tune on this record called Sky King that is derivative of his style of guitar playing, but the melody of the tune is more influenced by King Curtis's Soul Serenade. I mean, it's not exactly like either one of those tunes, but the concept and the groove and the feel is pretty much like that, except that it's got a slide guitar solo in the end.
Okay. So as you were growing up, although your dad insisted that you worked at, you got a trade, they were encouraged, they were supportive and encouraged you to play all along?
Always.
Yeah?
Yeah, I just couldn't do it for a living. I had to get a union card. I was a sheet metal worker, I was a plumber, I was a steam fitter, I did it all. And I finally whacked my thumb so good one day with a hammer, having to chop a hole through a concrete wall about 2 feet thick where they forgot to put an air duct in the basement of the building where my wife actually works now. And I flattened my thumb 100 times, and my uncle was the foreman on the job. I went up to Uncle Bob, and a couple of expletives later, I said, that's it. I'm not busting my hands up doing this anymore. This is not my choice.
Okay. So what about your early professional life? I mean, when you were old enough to sort of play clubs and get out there for money, Who did you start playing with then?
In those days, I was playing with a band called the Offbeats that originated out of Anacostia in Washington, and that was in '59. I was 14. We actually made a record back then.
Really? What label?
The Norwood label. There's probably, I have no idea how many there are, maybe 10, 20. I don't even have one anymore, but I have a tape of it. And it's not bad. I mean, these guys were all really good players. They had 2 sax players. And Dick Heinze, the world's greatest keyboard player that ever lived, who I loaned out to Roy Buchanan, because Dick needed a taste of success. He was in that band, and he just destroyed me constantly because he played piano like Oscar Peterson, and he played B3 like Jimmy Smith, and he was classically trained, a direct descendant of Dvorak. I mean, this guy was bad, and he was 21 years old when I was 14. So it was like, when you play with those guys, you have to better get off the pot and do it. You know?
Right. Did that take you into? I know you played with Roger Miller. Was there a long gap? Quite a bit later.
Oh yeah, Roger.
Was there
Miller.
anything?
That was in the '80s.
Okay. Was there anything to talk about between the Offbeats?
Sure. I played in show groups. I was in a band called the Bobby Charles and Kenny Gordon Review that actually originated out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, but I hooked up with him in Nashville.
That wasn't Bobby Charles.
Not that Bobby Charles.
Okay.
This was another one, and that was a really good group too. But it was a real show group. You change your clothes all the time, wore makeup, the whole bit. Played in mafia-owned clubs in Florida, and used to alternate sometimes with Woody Herman and some of the other big bands. I actually had an offer to play guitar with them back then, and I was scared to death to do it because I couldn't read music, so I declined that one. Dixieland asked me to join their band. I was 21 at that time, and I was petrified. So I played with that band, and then when I came back to D.C. and got married, I think we had a band, God, I forget the name of this band, Soul something or others, playing soul music.
Right.
And soul music and jazz in lounges. And we used to get fired all the time because we'd play off-the-wall jazz tunes, and people didn't want to hear that. They want to hear Midnight Hour. So we've always been very diverse and honestly confused because when I say our, I mean like Dick Heinze and myself. Our taste was just so diverse. We just weren't content playing with people who wanted to hear all the time. We figured we could educate them with something a little bit more wrong. They didn't want to hear that.